Yes.
Got sputters in my brain now, yeah. Little Earnhardt on the gas now. See myself inside the burnout. See you in the ashes when I cash out. Realize I'm quick to oppress. My own expressions you laid down to rest. My ego's a mess if it even exists. Been stuck in my head, didn't hear what you said. Got sputters in my brain now, yeah. Little Earnhardt on the gas now. See myself inside the burnout. See you in the ashes when I cash out. Realize I'm quick to oppress. My own expressions you lay down to rest. My ego's a mess if it even exists. Been stuck in my head, didn't hear what you said.
You've been feeling all the love I'm faking, but it's nothing like the drugs I'm taking. You're the promise that I keep on breaking. Missing red like the blade I'm staining. A lot of times I'd be afraid to feel alone now. Something's wrong with me, I'm hitting on your phone now. Don't know why, but I've been feeling like a ghost now. Got nobody, I guess that's the way it goes now. Now I'm driving all alone through a new town. Never had too many friends here anyway. I'm getting sick, I'm gonna learn to tie a noose now. Just like it's coming to an end here anyway. Every pill that I take is a crutch. Every word that I say, I've been talking too much. You been calling my name, I don't hear it at all. What else I'm supposed to do with my back against the wall?
Got sputters in my brain now, yeah. Little Earnhardt on the gas now. See myself inside the burnout. See you in the ashes when I cash out. Realize I'm quick to oppress. My own expressions you lay down to rest. My ego's a mess if it even exists. Been stuck in my head, didn't hear what you said. Got sputters in my brain now, yeah. Little Earnhardt on the gas now. See myself inside the burnout. See you in the ashes when I cash out. Realize I'm quick to oppress. My own expressions you lay down to rest. My ego's a mess if it even exists. Been stuck in my head, didn't hear what you said.
I've been lying since a jet, crunchy fast. Finding God and the stars around my head. So having dreams that get it filled with lead. Yeah, I'm anxious from the top, plus you're full of shit. I just woke up and poured champagne. It's in the hard to maintain. Clothes looking heavy with blood rain. Place to the sky, my soul tank. Soul takes, I fucked up my brain. You're insane, idolize in me. Soul takes, I fucked up my brain. You're insane.
All these thoughts I can't erase them
but too wasted when you convince yourself that I am the one you love. Found myself in RX patient, constant dosing confrontations. Notice you can't hold a conversation on your own. Been all alone on the calls, counting me in my nose. Bite my tongue a little harder, taste the iron in the flows. Got a house full of ghosts, shells of stories untold. Why the fuck you say you love me and stay doing the most? Rosary of red rubies are my home. I'ma make sure that my family is good when I'm gone. Nothing's good when you're gone, but the road issue is something I'll address on my own. Only call you and I'm only sorry. I can't offer nothing unless you're trying to free something for a night, but to be honest, I'm indifferent. Sorry that I'm always distant. Trust me, I'll keep that persistent till we lose touch.
Start your engine!
Fired up when you're ready. Fired up when you're ready. Fired up.
Hello everybody, my name is James McCombs and welcome in to another week of White Knuckle Racing League action.
Turn it up, side, right side. Stay low.
Start your engine!
Fired up when you're ready. Fired up when you're ready. Fired up.
Hello everybody, my name is James McCombs and welcome in to another week of White Knuckle Racing League action.
Turn it up, side, right side. Stay low.
Start your engine!
Fired up when you're ready. Fired up when you're ready. Fired up.
Hello everybody, my name is James McCombs and welcome in to White Knuckle Racing League action.
Turn it up, side, right side. Stay low.
tonight. So super excited to kind of bring you guys a show.
Your engine!
Not just the members, but people who
Fire up when you're ready. Fire up when you're ready. Fire it up.
Hello, everybody. My name is James McCombs, and welcome in to another week of White Knuckle Racing League action.
Turn it up to side. Right side. Stay low.
Getting drafted in tonight's event. How important is it to be drafted to the right team?
I think it's super important because we know it doesn't necessarily have to be like a close friend that you've been racing with for a long time, but someone that you can have chemistry with, that you can really connect. Because
all right, everybody.
Teamwork, as we noticed, has been a huge part going forward. And I think our commissioner Ridge Rat is ready to start the draft, so we'll hand it off over to him.
All right, sounds good.
All right, everyone, welcome to the draft. This is White Knuckle Racing Season 2 draft, all right? First of all, I want to thank everybody who participated in our preseason and also Season 1 and returned, and it's been great. We got a lot to look forward to. So let's get right to it. We have the captain's names written down on these index cards. We're gonna fold them up, put them in this hat, and we're gonna draw for the pick order, all right?
Let's see who's it going to be.
Want to do the honors, babe? No? All right, got them all in there. Shake them up, shake them. And with the first pick of the Season 2 draft for White Knuckle Racing, we have TCW.
Wow. TCW with the first, looks like he's getting the first overall pick there, James.
All right, so TCW is going to be the captain this year of a mixed team between Roush Racing and Front Row Motorsports. So he's going to be piloting the 6, the 17, the 34, and the 38. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does because he wasn't necessarily the most electric driver, although he was consistent in season number 1. It'll be interesting to see how he drafts at the first overall pick.
And Dale Miller picking second. And not a whole lot of speculation with who he's going to pick, unless his brother's taking overall first. I'm expecting him to pick his brother on this one.
Third pick.
I could totally see that.
Coach Matt.
It's definitely going to be interesting to see what he does with the second pick, knowing that he doesn't have the number 1 overall pick, that he can still do a great job rounding out a good team with that second pick being his first one.
And leading Hendrick Motorsports coach Matt getting the 3rd overall pick.
He will be piloting the number 9 this year and having his team already figured out with trucks.
And the last pick will be
on the truck level. Actually, just came in a couple minutes ago with his team. It'll be interesting to see what he decides to do, whether he wants to fill his roster out with speedy drivers or more consistent drivers.
Absolutely. And then to round out the bottom 2, we have D-Blood at the 4th pick.
All right.
Grim Reaper running out that 5th pick.
TCW, you're on the clock.
All right, D-Blood representing Gibbs with the 4th overall pick in the first round, and he's an interesting one to watch. Absolutely dominated the Truck Series and ended up taking home the championship, now going all the way up to being a Cup captain. It'll be interesting to see how he takes on drafting duties throughout the night, because this isn't something that I'm sure he was prepared for just about a month ago whenever he won the Truck Championship.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a rags to riches story in the gaming world. A guy who kind of he joined, middle of the season. I was listening to Ski Mask podcast not too long ago. D-Blood was talking about how he didn't have a lot going on because of COVID, and he found a nice creative outlet in NASCAR Heat 5. He's been a huge contributor on and off the track with this league, not just racing, but also helping out with graphic designing, and basically keeping the league updated as far as storylines go. So he's just been an awesome guy, and it's good to see him get his Cup chance, and not just a chance to ride in the Cup, but to own his own team. So awesome to see D-Blood. And Plus, I'm going to come out and say it. The man's got a velvety baritone. I can't confirm nor deny, but I'm pretty sure that man is Luke Bryan. He sounds just like Luke Bryan, James. And I needed to come out and say it, get that off my chest.
No, you're absolutely right. I totally see it, and I get where you're coming from there. I also want to talk a little bit about Grim Reaper. He's going to be heading up in the number 4 machine this year, heading up Stuart Haas Racing.
And with the first pick
to get their developmental programs in dirt
of the Season 2 White Knuckle Racing Draft, TCW has picked
tonight with his picks. All right, the first overall pick is being written down.
Jose Protege.
And there you go. Not a shocker to a lot of people. A driver that was in the playoffs.
Congratulations, Jose, and Dale, you're on the clock.
James, that's a great selection for TCW to start off this round.
Jose Protege is the first overall pick by TCW. Definitely going to be interesting to see him go over there to Roush and Front Row Motorsports. He's going to be in an interesting position because we haven't necessarily seen him be the number 1 premier driver on a team yet. And although we've seen the amazing consistency that he's had and the extremely great ability to be able to do well on pit road, conserve fuel, conserve tires, and have a great car in the long run, he did not win a ton of races last year. So it's going to be interesting to see whether he can up the performance in the wins category and be able to take home more points for that team. That's the only concern I have, though. Other than that, Jose Protege is a relatively quick driver on the racetrack, being near the front most of the time, and I do like this selection quite a bit.
Right, and you mentioned a guy that loves the strategy aspect of this league. You go back to Homestead, I believe, was able to save up 8 laps when everyone else couldn't even come close to that, had to make that extra pit stop. He stayed back, chilled out on the throttle, saved enough fuel, and stole a victory at Homestead, a guy who wasn't contending all evening, but he's just one of those guys. He's smart. The wheels are always churning inside that brain of his to figure out what he needs to do to get a win, whether or not he's the fastest car now on that particular track that particular week. So great pick by TCW. There's only so much we can say about Jose. We know him well. We know he's fast. That's an excellent selection for TCW and Roush Racing.
Absolutely, and definitely going to be something that TCW should be proud of, is he's got Jose Protege now up front for that team. So the next pick that we have up is going to be D. Miller's pick for the RCR group. He's going to be piloting the number 3 this season, so he's going to be looking to fill out the rest of the
pick is in
stable. And I'll be interested to see whether he decides to draft a little bit more based
huge
on
surprise here.
Now that the big strategy guy.
Not really sure anyone saw this coming with the second pick on Dale Miller's team for RCR, but it's going to be Dale's brother, Mark.
Who saw that coming? I sure didn't.
All right, Coach Matt, you're on the clock.
M10 Miller is the choice with the second overall pick in the draft, taken by his brother D. Miller. So the RCR Miller brothers continue to go along into season number 2. Now taking on a little bit of a different form in the 3 and the 8, I'm sure, instead of the 31 and the 8. But nonetheless, still going to be very, very fun to watch that RCR stable go along this season now with the brother duo.
And everyone who's been in this league long enough since season 1 knows the Miller brothers are dangerous. They put in a lot of work to be competitive every single week. Not a shocker he picked his brother, but it just makes sense. And it'd be weird if it wasn't, to be honest. The Miller brothers, you just kind of associate with them together. Another group of guys that do a lot for this league, not just racing, but things outside, like with the websites, and creating the videos. As you saw in the opening video, that season 2 trailer was made by the Miller brothers. So, excellent selection. And I was actually talking to Dale last week, and he was telling me when he's looking for guys to draft, he's looking for guys that aren't just fast, but that he thinks has high character. So, he's just one of those guys. He wants to have fun with his teammates, but more importantly, he's wanting to make sure that they're good people too. So I'm not saying not everyone's a good person in this league, but that's his strategy.
Absolutely, and definitely important whenever the guy you're racing against won't take you out, especially whenever he's your brother. And it's very interesting to see because D. Miller and M10 Miller, I've been on the racetrack with both of them before, and D. Miller has said that his brother, M10, is actually faster at certain times on the racetrack, quite more often than himself. So definitely a good ad for him, I think, in his personal opinion, and I'll be interested to see how that works out for him.
Yeah, and I think the Ridge Rat might be having an issue with his live stream. I'm gonna keep talking, James. I'm gonna get to the bottom of this real quick. All right.
All right, absolutely. So the next pick that is going to be coming up is going to be with Coach Matt in the number 9 Hendrick Motorsports Chevy. He's going to be captaining the Hendrick Motorsports team this year, and it's definitely going to be a team that should be consistent throughout the season. The Season 1 champion for Cup Series, McLovin Racing, was in the number 24 last season, run by William Byron. In the Cup Series, run by McLovin Racing last year. So Coach Matt, I'm sure, is going to be going back and trying to construct a team that will be championship caliber once again. Matt himself only was able to get one win last year at Auto Club, but was the most consistent driver from this first season that we had that ended about a month ago. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see what he decides to do with this third overall pick in just a minute here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, talk about a guy like Coach Matt who performed so strongly in Season 1. You know, having guys like McLovin Racing, the Season 1 champion, you know, young boy Terrell, guys like that who are super competitive. So it's not just Coach Matt. He's able to. There's a lot of fluidity with these teams that he selects, and you know he's a guy that can coach someone up, but he's also willing to take notes himself. So he's always constantly trying to improve as well. So when he's picking, if he's got the option, I would imagine he's going to take his teammate of last year and the inaugural champion of McLovin Racing. So we'll see how that plays out. We did just get word that Ridge Rat did lose power. You know, you can't count on anything that down in Miami, apparently. So he should be back up here in a few minutes. So, you know, we'll just keep talking, bringing you expert commentary on NASCAR Heat 5 and the White Knuckle Racing League. But yeah, Coach Matt, I would imagine he goes with McLovin Racing. Not sure how the strategy is going to play out. But you know, there's so much talent this year. You know, we saw the league end with about 40 drivers in the league, and within the last month, because they took a month off from the transition to Heat 4 to 5, and we've seen this league grow to over 100 members, just like that. So there's a lot of talent in the talent pool. There's some guys on the bubble, Xfinity and Cup. So we'll see how everything plays out and the strategies with these Cup owners and see who they want to go with. So, but if I'm Coach Matt and if I'm inside his head. Also, congrats on getting married. Hope that lasts your entire lifetime. But I'm going to go.
Absolutely.
That's my guess is McLovin Racing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, after winning the championship for him last year, why wouldn't you want to bring him back when he's still on the board at number 3, which was a little bit surprising to me to see that he was still on the board. I was actually a little bit expecting that he might have been the number 1 driver taken, that he was going to be the champion after last season and coming back in with that reputation. But it's good to see that he is still here on the board at number 3, and I couldn't imagine that Coach Matt takes anyone else. We'll be looking to see here in just a minute who he does decide to draft.
Right, and you know, I was thinking to myself, you know, strategically. I mean, as far as the draft order went, I thought Matt needed to be in the top 2 to for sure to get a guy like McLovin. We don't even know if he's going to get him yet, but because I would assume that Dale Miller was going to draft his brother, and he ended up doing that. So if he had the first pick and Matt was second, I think that was his best choice. But as soon as we saw TCW go with Jose Protege, and you see Coach Matt at the third pick, I was kind of in my head thinking, oh, okay, that might be a piece of the puzzle right there for Hendrick Motorsports. So yeah, so far so good. I mean, I like everyone's picks. M10 Miller is a great racer. He showed a lot of strength last year, so he's definitely worthy of a first-round pick as well. Jose Protege, can't say enough about that guy. One of the coolest guys to talk to. So, and also just a heck of a racer. But as I mentioned, a lot of talent in the talent pool. Xfinity Cup. I'm actually I think I might be more excited for the Xfinity drivers just because we have so much talent. See where everyone goes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It looks like the third pick is in, and we have, although we don't have the stream up and running for the Ridge Rat right now, we are still getting picks that go in through, and right now it looks like Coach Matt has put his pick in to the Ridge Rat, and he has decided to take McLovin Racing, number 3 overall, and I would assume that he's going to be going right back to that number 24 Chevy Camaro where he was at last year.
Right, just as we were just talking about, you know, not a shock. McLovin Racing, we can't say enough about him. We've talked about him for like the last 5 minutes. Just a super fast guy that vibes really well with Coach Matt. We saw the chemistry last year. And me personally, being in that Hendrick team in the Xfinity, I got to work a lot with McLovin. He's always willing to pass out some notes, trying to help you find more speed. I remember specifically Homestead. I was garbage at Homestead. My practice laps were down. I was maybe thinking I could get a top 5 run. Ended up finishing second, and I think I owe a lot to his credit. So it's gonna be an awesome pairing with these guys. We'll see, where these guys end up moving forward.
All right, absolutely. I'm loving to see that he decided to go back with what works, and I'm worried that a lot of team owners will decide to try and take advantage of the draft position that they have to draft some new guys that they were wishing that they could have on their roster last year, guys who came up in the middle of the season, like maybe the Heredia God, or maybe someone who's going to be coming up this year in the Xfinity Series, let's say guys like Nemco Wood 2187, things like that. But it's good to see that certain team owners are still deciding to go back and go with drivers that they know work. So it's going to be interesting to see who decides to stick with that philosophy, who changes that, and who decides to maybe go with completely different drivers that they've maybe never even raced with before.
Absolutely. We talked about guys coming onto the scene. You mentioned it in the intro, but like a guy like Billy Boy Roy, who's just done an outstanding job in the preseason making a name for himself. We've seen he's fast at every single track, and I think he's a guy that's going to compete every single week and has the potential to be like a consistent winner. I'm not talking 1 or 2 races, but the potential of maybe being that breakout guy that can get into that 3 to 5 win threshold, like a Terrell we saw last year. So that's a guy to look out for. So I'm guys like Jay Coos, 5611, some returning guys, Marcus Dubb. There's a bunch of guys. Mike G, another guy on the bubble like myself. Are we going to get drafted Cup, Xfinity? But racing with him, being a teammate of his, that's another guy that's super fast. The one thing that he's always been really good at is pit strategy and pit entry, which is an underrated aspect to racing in NASCAR Heat 5, is getting on pit road as fast as you can, not sacrificing a lot of time, and able to get off pit road smoothly and not breaking any rules doing it. So that's another guy to look out for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember looking at the race on the last Xfinity race of the season at Las Vegas and seeing Mike G have the unfortunate set of circumstances that he did as Ridrak gets his stream back up now, writes down McLovin for the 3rd pick and makes it official. Coach Matt has taken McLovin here. I remember watching that race with Mike G, and he was very, very competitive that night with Don. And it was unfortunate to see him blow that right rear tire and lose 6 laps on the track. It was insurmountable, and it was unfortunate to see him lose out on the championship. He was a possible winner and had the best car that night as well. So it'll be interesting to see whether he proved with his strong showings early and late in races and with his couple of wins in Xfinity and his chance at the championship to run down Don that he could be a Cup driver after tonight instead of an Xfinity driver next season.
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest with you, James, I was too upset because I was in that race and I got smoked going into pit road. So I was too mad trying to catch up to pay attention to what was going on. But as soon as I heard Mike blew his tire, and it was kind of a freak thing. It wasn't like he had 2% left on his tire. He had 9 or 10%. It was just a freak thing. Blew it right as soon as he's about to get on pit road, and it ended up costing him a couple laps and ultimately the championship, because it was a close one coming down. Those guys were 1 and 2. Caps and Mike G. So unfortunate for him, but a chance to rebound in season 2 wherever he ends up.
Absolutely. And it's definitely going to be interesting to see as well because, like I said, he was extremely fast. I believe that Don seemed to be one of the only guys that could keep up with him throughout an entire race over the course of the season, except for you. Of course, you were able to do it at Atlanta. I remember Sung-Ting Wong 420 was another driver in the number 20 for Joe Gibbs Racing in the Xfinity Series last year that had some competitive battles with the number 8 machine of Mike G at Junior Motorsports last year. So it'll be interesting to see some of those Xfinity drivers that were veterans and definitely have a great chance at possibly being drafted into the Cup Series tonight instead of staying Xfinity drivers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw guys graduate from trucks to Xfinity to Cup last year alone. So just because you start at a certain series doesn't mean that's where you end up, even 2 or 3 weeks from now. If you show out, you show you got the speed, it's very plausible you'll see yourself in an Xfinity ride, in a Cup ride, or if you're in the Truck Developmental League, you can see yourself back up to the next step in the full-time Truck Series. So, as we mentioned a few times, it's going to be super exciting to watch as these guys continue to figure their strategies out, how the league really works, 50% races, 3 times wear. And go from there. So, just like I said, just because you start somewhere doesn't mean you'll end there.
Absolutely. And things can change throughout the season as well. It'll definitely be interesting to see what these guys decide to do as the picks go on. It looks like right now D-Blood is on the clock, and as we continue to have problems with Ridge Rat Stream, we're going to continue to work on it. But for the moment, we are working on D-Blood's pick, and it looks like for the moment he has decided to put his pick into the chat that we've got going to make sure that we have a secondary option for you guys so that we can get everything set for the moment. We look at D-Blood's pick, and he has decided to take J-Cuz as the 4th overall pick in the Season 2 draft. I have to get your opinion on this one because I don't really know too much about J-Cuz myself. I've noticed that he's fast, but I've only raced with him once or twice on my own time, and I haven't seen him on the racetrack all too often. So I want to know what your opinion is on this pick here.
J-Cuz, and I haven't competed with him in the league, but as far as like the preseason has gone, he's super fast, super clean. He's not a guy that's going to dive into the corner and shove him or another guy up the track. He's a play it by ear type of guy. He's going to make the right decision, very calculated. He doesn't make a ton of mistakes. So, just knowing D-Blood, I know he's someone who wants somebody who's going to be clean, someone he likes to race with, and someone who can help some younger drivers and develop the team as the season goes on. So, solid pick. I can't say I expect the J-Cuz first rounder, because there's so much talent. It's hard to objectively even say anyone deserves a spot versus the other. But this one, a little surprising. But at the end of the day, it's like I'm not surprised at the same time, just knowing who D-Blood is and what he looks for in a driver.
Absolutely. So with that, we move on to the 5th pick, Grim X Reaper X51, the man who had the 5th pick and is taking over right now for the captaining duties next year for Stewart-Haas Racing, and he's already put his pick into the draft pool as well, and he has decided to take Billy Boy Roy 538 with the 5th overall pick in the draft. This is someone that not a ton of people have heard a lot about unless they've been watching the preseason streams. Only came in about 3 weeks ago to start running with the White Knuckle Racing League, has shown an absolutely insane amount of speed, and it's hard for me to imagine that he actually fell this far because I haven't seen a driver that's been faster in the league and has been able to put as much speed into a race car out of seemingly nowhere than this guy.
To be honest, I really thought he was going to go to D-Blood's team and race for JGR, but my guess he's a guy that's kind of new on the scene. He doesn't have that Season 1 reputation, so maybe guys didn't feel comfortable because they didn't really necessarily know him as well as some of the other drivers. But even if you're like an NFL coach and someone takes a guy that you might have wanted, you take the next available talent, the best talent available, and that's Billy Boy Roy. So great selection by Grim Reaper. I think this is a guy that's going to really help his team in many ways, but also represent the league well, as we do have the league by league tournament tomorrow night. He's representing for White Knuckle Racing, so he can kind of do it all. He went from not knowing who he was to all of a sudden he's representing the entire league, and he hasn't even ran a full league race yet. So great pickup by Grim Reaper, smart choice. That's the right selection, and we'll see how round number 2 is going to go after that. That's a big pick there, a big pickup by Grim Reaper.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have anyone, because I know I have someone in my mind already, do you have a single driver that you're a little bit surprised, even just a little bit, that wasn't taken in the first round of the draft in these first 5 picks here?
As we mentioned, there's so many great guys that are running Cup or on that bubble. But the Herdia God, to me, another guy who raced like 1 or 2 races at Xfinity, won like both races and immediately went to Cup. And he even won a race. I think he won his first race in Cup and made the playoffs just like that. So another guy that has a lot of potential. I thought he would have been picked by now, maybe that pick number 4 or 5. So that's kind of my big surprise at the moment. Other than that, a lot of it's just kind of up in the air. Maybe a guy like young boy Terrell. I know he had a few issues with pit exits, but at the end of the day, that guy is always in contention to win a race. And another guy I'm kind of surprised I haven't seen gone yet.
Yeah, I was kind of in the same ballpark there with the Heredia God and with young boy Terrell, 2 drivers that had an insane amount of speed in season number 1. Heredia God showing it off at Texas, and Terrell absolutely dominating at Bristol and getting another win as well throughout the season, I believe finishing with 2. So it's going to be interesting to see what these guys decide to do in the early second round, knowing that those guys are still on the board, whether those are the views that we have, whether those team owners decide to share the same views or not. I guess we'll figure that out in just a second here with Grim making the first pick in the second round of the draft just momentarily here for SHR. So right now, for the moment, Grim Reaper working on getting the first pick in the second round, and this is going to be the 6th pick in the draft. Currently, we're looking at the roster. We're looking at the first overall pick in the draft, Jose Protege, going to Front Row Motorsports as well as Roush Fenway Racing in that dual team setup that we have. Jose Protege, the man taken first overall in this draft. Second overall right now was taken by his brother, D. Miller. That would be M10 Miller, driving in the RCR stable. Third overall, Coach Matt decided to take his former champion in season number 1 in the Cup Series, McLovin Racing, and the number 24 machine, going to be right back there in that group. Fourth overall taken, D. Blood decided to go in and take J. Cuz, who's a driver that we did not really expect to go this high, but very, very glad to see for him. Obviously, D. Blood sees something great in him, and I'm very excited to see what he's going to do with that team.
All right, guys, as you all know, we're doing the snake order here, so Grim's
and
going to
then
have
with the 5th
back-to-back
pick, Grim
picks.
Reaper takes the fastest man in the West so
with
far,
the
Billy
6th
Boy
pick,
Roy.
first pick of the second round,
Review for the first round of the draft, and now
Desert Commando.
we move into the second round of the draft, and Grim Reaper 51 is on the clock once again.
Yeah, and Grim Reaper ends up selecting.
All right, D-Blood, you're back on the clock.
Desert Commando. Sorry about that.
So Grim Reaper decides to take Desert Commando, a driver that I've gotten to see quite a bit in the truck series in the last few weeks, driving in the number 23 primarily online. And he's definitely shown quite a bit of speed, but I think his name of the game is consistency. He's done a phenomenal job of being there at the end of races, and even if he's not winning every single one of the preseason races, because there's other guys that are just as fast or faster that were in those races as well, such as Billy Roy. We are looking at Desert Commando as a very consistent driver, and I think that that's going to be a good pick for him, getting a very, very fast driver in Billy Boy Roy, and then going back right around and picking up a very consistent driver in Desert Commando.
Right, and as Ridge mentioned, we are doing a snake draft, so you get 2 picks in a row. So I think Grim made out really nicely with the drivers selected. So just like that, you have 2 super fast guys. Guys that still have a lot to prove. Billy Boy not competing in the league before, but obviously has shown a lot of talent. Desert Commando, who was super consistent in the truck series last year and now making his jump to Cup. Congratulations to that man right there. As we look for D-Blood to make the selection. And I honestly have no idea. I don't even have a thought of who D-Blood's going to pick for this next. But a guy that not a lot of people have talked about lately. He was a little bit quiet during the preseason, but just racing with him for the last few months, he's one of the smoothest drivers I've ever seen. And that's E-Bulldog 48. I mean, just talk about a guy who is smooth, who's really good at conserving his tires, and it almost seems like he can always last 1 lap longer than you, no matter how conservative you are. He's just that good at conserving his tires, and is fast while doing it. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's another guy I'm looking to see where he goes. That would personally, if that was D-Blood, that's who I would go with, but we'll see what comes up here in the next couple minutes.
Absolutely. I got the chance to talk with E-Bulldog over the course of the season once he got into Cup racing in the number 37 for JTG Daughtry. And very interestingly, he talked a lot about before the pre-race that we had at Texas in week number 10, just how much goes into making sure that he perfects his setup in the short run and in the long run before every race. He's very, very much a tactician whenever it comes to getting the right setup on his race car, making adjustments on pit road, everything from wedge to tape to tire pressures to making sure that he plays the right strategy on pit road. He has it down pat, and he also knows exactly what to do on the racetrack. And although that might not always result in wins, he never pisses off anybody, and he always manages to be in a good position to gain some points at the end of the week. Definitely a safe pick in my opinion, and I think he should be going in the next couple of picks here. D-Blood once again on the clock, maybe looking to pick him up and have another consistent driver on his roster to go along with his first-round pick, J. Cuz.
Yeah, I mean, some other guys I haven't really been mentioned yet, but a guy like Something Wong, who was always running top 3 in Xfinity in season 1. Another guy that might be on the bubble, but a guy who's shown that it doesn't matter what car you put him in, he's gonna be competing for a win, if not worst case scenario, a top 5. Had a couple mistakes in Xfinity that cost him some wins. halfway through the year, but you give him a chance, he's gonna impress you in many different ways. So a guy like something Wong, Paul Outlaw, I mean, the list goes on and on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember you talked a little bit about Paul Outlaw there just a second. He has been one of the drivers that I have yet to mention, and I don't know how I managed to forget about it. He's such an amazing character.
All right. And D-Blood, with his second pick for his team.
He was very excited, even though I'm pretty sure he finished third.
I know this driver's going to be happy he's got picked here
a great
beginning of the draft, and
he's
no
going to be very
surprise to anyone.
to have on any team. We'll see what D-Blood decides to do here in the second round. Pick is
Welcome
in
back to the Cup Series.
In the second
formerly
round,
known as Fire Slayer.
decides to take
Now he's an
Paul
outlaw.
Just as we mentioned him, Paul Outlaw gets his name written on the
Coach
board.
Matt, you're on the
Second
clock.
Driver taken in the Joe Gibbs Racing stable by D-Blood. So two very much slightly unexpected but very interesting picks to dissect here in the Joe Gibbs Racing stable in the first two rounds.
Yeah, we just mentioned another great character, a great selection there by D-Blood. Now has a good 1-2 combo there of Jay Cuz and Paul Outlaw to go along with D-Blood. So great selections. I mean, that is the advantage of the snake draft. I mean, you might not get the guy you exactly want in round one, and if you do, but if you're in the lower part of the round, you have an excellent shot of getting the guy you want there in the second round. So, patience paying off so far for D-Blood.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that he is making these picks almost as a tactician, like I said before, with every single thing put into account. All these team owners have been looking at these guys for about 3 weeks now, pretty much ever since they were decided to be the captains for the Cup Series. And I'll be interested to see what they decide to do as these rounds continue. Are they going to decide to get a little more risky with their picks? For the moment, it seems like a lot of the guys that haven't shown necessarily a crazy amount of speed but have shown great consistency have been the guys that have been taken early on. So now it'll be interesting to see, will the speedy drivers who definitely go out and show out at certain racetracks and with certain days whenever they're on, will those guys start to get picked up really soon, or will they be pushed back into the third round and maybe even into the early fourth?
Right. I think at this point, I mean, everyone left on the table has a ton of speed, so we know that it's going to come down to personal preference. The guy you're looking for, is he going to be a guy that can get it done when push comes to shove, the pressure's on? Can he move a guy out of the way, maybe not be so nice with a couple laps to go to try to either move up a position for an extra point or to even go for the win? So there's different styles of driving. Some guys are more aggressive than the others, but no one, I mean, from what I've seen, no one's really dirty. So I know a guy like D-Blood, he was talking about on Ski Mask podcast, he loves the clean racers, the respectful racing, as does Coach Matt. So whoever Coach Matt goes with next, I'm super excited to see who's going to complement him and McLovin Racing to try to recreate what the magic they had in season one, and going for a second straight championship within that organization of Hendrick Motorsports.
Yeah, absolutely. And McLovin, a great first pick. Someone that showed a good mix of consistency and speed in the short and long run, as well as being able to put himself in a position to win near the end. And it looks like Coach Matt, once again on the clock, will he decide to go with another driver that was in his stable last year? It's still on the board here. We talked about Youngboy Terrell, of course, just a couple minutes ago. Still on the board in the second round here. Drove the 48 there for the Hendrick Motorsports stable.
All right, pick is in.
They decide
Team Hendrick and Coach Matt.
Another driver that was there already, or will they go for a new driver that they saw earlier in the preseason?
And the pick is in.
With the third pick in the second round, 8th overall, Coach Matt decides to take...
And returning to Team Hendrick, we have Youngboy Terrell.
The man who drove the 48
D. Miller, you're on the clock.
Last year and made his way into the White Knuckle Racing League Monster Energy Cup Series playoffs, now is the 8th overall pick, and Coach Matt giving absolutely identical to the team he had last year. And man, I'm a little bit surprised that these other captains have just decided to let this play out into Coach Matt's favor. And now Matt bringing that chemistry of the team that he had last year right back into the room.
Absolutely. A guy who won multiple races last year. I mean, so far, Coach Matt, he liked what he had last year, so he's going to bring back, if the opportunity presented himself, to bring back guys that he was comfortable with, that he knows can get the job done. So this did not shock me one bit. It's kind of who I expected he'd go with. And knowing him personally, I know for a fact this is exactly what he wanted to get his boys back. So he's getting the band back together so far, and we'll see what D. Miller has to say. And I want to say something else here, James. I'm going to come out and say it. It could be controversial, whatever. But Ridge Rat, Mr. Fred has surprisingly great handwriting. I just wanted that to get out there into the universe, and I'll leave you with that.
All right, no, absolutely. That's not controversial at all. I have to agree with you there. His handwriting much better than my own. Now, granted, I'm a 17-year-old high school student out of Las Vegas, Nevada, so I'm sure my handwriting is going to get better with time as I continue to do that more often. But yeah, he definitely has some strong handwriting. It's a little bit goated right now, I have to say.
That's a good adjective, strong. He shows a lot of oomph with direct some marker.
Absolutely. It's big, it's bold, and it's brash.
All right, the pick is in.
Gentlemen, we are getting ready for
New
the
member, RCR.
The fourth pick in the second round by D. Miller in the RCR stable, and the pick is in. Ridge is writing it down on the board now. You guys are seeing it with us. Who's it going to be?
Turtle Wells.
Our very own Tim J.A. Turtle Wells 73 has been taken 9th overall by D. Miller into the RCR stable. Tim, congratulations on being selected 9th overall, 4th in the second round by D. Miller to the RCR group.
Well, first and foremost, James, I just want to thank God for getting me into a position where I can join such a great organization. We're going to bring a lot of horsepower to the team, and we're going to bring sponsorship dollars. We're going to do what we can to get the job done. So super excited to join the Miller brothers, and drive whatever car they seem fit for me. So I'm going to try not to cry. My parents are here, and it's just take it away.
Alrighty, thank you very much, Turtle. Congratulations on being selected 9th overall. The man who got the win in Atlanta last season in the Xfinity Series in Junior Motorsports has been taken by D. Miller, stolen away from what I'm sure Coach Matt was hoping, a driver that would be there in the third round for him to take and add another guy who was in his Xfinity Series program last season at Junior Motorsports. So now that Turtle Wells is gone 9th on the board, only one big name that I can think of remains that I was expecting to actually go in the first round of this draft, and that would be the Heredia God, Alexis Heredia Jr., the man himself, who ran in the 42 last year after about halfway through the season, made his way into the Cup Series and made waves, both with his aggressive yet very, very quick driving style and his win that he got at Texas, as well as all of the great moves that he made on the racetrack that seemed to give us a continuous amount of highlight reel-esque passes and battles on the racetrack. So I'm very excited to see whether he decides to get taken number 10 here by TCW, or whether he decides to maybe go with another driver that we talked about, like E-Bulldog, another man who's very much a tactician, a strategist, and a man who tries his best to put himself in position to be up front and score as many points as possible at the end of races and take home stage wins. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned a guy like Heredia got still on the table, as well as E-Bulldog. I don't think you can go wrong either way. You've got two selections here. You got two selections in a row. I think you go both.
All right, the pick is in.
I can totally understand if he does take both. He's got the best tactician that we've seen in the first round of the draft right now with Jose Protege, and now he is writing down the pick for the second round. TCW selects... He selects the Heredia God.
TCW, back on the clock.
Overall, the last pick in the second round of the draft. And man, I'll tell you what, I'm a little bit surprised that some of these guys were able to let that happen. See the Heredia God fall all the way down to 10. I believe that TCW's got now both one of the fastest drivers in the league in the Heredia God and the biggest tactician in the league in Jose Protege. I believe that TCW might have just constructed the best roster that we've seen, apart from possibly Coach Matt, so far in this draft.
He had to wait a long time for that second pick, but for a guy like the Heredia guy to fall that far back into the second round, that's a steal. That's an absolute steal for TCW. It's going to be awesome to see what Roush Racing, although now that they're my competitors, maybe not so awesome. But it's at the end of the day, I mean, everyone's so talented, and the community this has been built into, TCW's done a great job getting Jose, being patient, seeing maybe some of his guys that he wanted went, but I'm sure the Heredia guy was on his big board, and I'm sure he's very thrilled to have him around number 2.
Absolutely. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, just want to take you through a quick roster update to make sure that you have everything set up. With the first pick in the first round of the draft, TCW went with Jose Protege, and he also decides in the second round to go with the Heredia God. So right now, Front Row Motorsports and Roush Racing has Jose Protege and Heredia God in the building. D. Miller has his brother M10 Miller, who he picked second overall, and the man, the myth, the legend himself, Turtle Wells, 73, taken with the 9th pick on his roster. Coach Matt, the 2 returning drivers that he already had on his roster last year, McLovin Racing with the 3rd pick and Young Boy Terrell with the 8th. D-Blood, who headed to the Joe Gibbs stable this year, picks J. Cuz 4th overall and Pa Outlaw with the 7th pick in the draft earlier in the second round. And Grim Reaper 51 goes with Billy Boy Roy, the fastest hand in the West, along with Desert Commando, the most consistent driver that I've seen so far, with the 5th and 6th
TCW with back-to-back picks here in the snake order.
Definitely not what I expected. There is still a lot of talent on the board as we get ready to see TCW's first pick in the 3rd round.
And Ridge plays perfectly in front of the name, so we can't see it.
Cola Gator.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And Dale, you're back on the clock.
TCW goes with P. Cola Gator with the first pick in the 3rd round of the draft. I want to get your opinion on this because P. Cola impressed me in the truck series, running along with him in a lot of races this year. Showed to be very consistent and very fast. I'll be interested to see how he does in TCW's team.
Oh, I've raced with him a bunch the last couple weeks in the preseason. Nothing bad to say about the guy. Super cool dude, and he's just a fast guy, but he's super clean. Like you almost feel bad if you accidentally maybe move him to the track. He's just a nice guy. He kind of like a Mark Martin-esque racer. He's super consistent, super fast. Great selection there by TCW. So him being in Cup does not shock me one bit. Excited to see what he can contribute in Season 2 of the White Knuckle Racing League.
Absolutely. The man who started off 3 weeks ago without any of us knowing who he was comes in and immediately gets drafted with the first pick in the 3rd round. A great story there. P. Cola Gator, the man who came in and nearly dominated the truck series in the preseason, comes in.
Dale's got his pick
in the 3rd round. TCW now has 3 picks under his belt. And we move on to the next pick with RCR. D. Miller on the clock, and the pick is already in. Ridge is writing it down on the board.
Mike G.
And Mike G, 2338.
Coach Matt, you're on the clock.
The 2nd place finisher in the Xfinity Series standings gets picked with the 2nd pick in the 3rd round.
Yeah, now, to be honest, I that's an awesome pick. I think Coach Matt's not going to be too thrilled taking a couple guys on his board, myself included, and Mike G, former teammates from Season 1. We were both in the Xfinity together. Excited to have Mike G come along, be my teammate again. This time driving for the Miller brothers at RCR. So, like I said, I talked about him a lot early in the broadcast. Super fast, super cool dude. He's always willing to help the next person. So, he's a guy I feel confident in both of our abilities to go along with the Miller brothers. So, excellent selection by Mike G. But the next guy selecting might have to do some new strategy calls here, as I'm sure he's not too thrilled that a couple of his guys got taken.
Yeah, absolutely. Those were 2 of the 3 Xfinity Series drivers for Coach Matt last season. And it's definitely going to be interesting to see how Coach Matt decides to construct his roster now, seeing that the bottom has almost been taken out from underneath him after he was, I'm sure, hoping to get either you or Mike G in the 3rd round of the draft. Now he is looking to try and figure out what his next move is going to be. He's got the 3rd pick in the 3rd round. And after constructing a roster that is comprised normally of the drivers that he raced with last season already, we're going to figure out what he decides to do here, whether he decides to go with a known face one last time or whether he finally decides to take a driver that wasn't on this team last year.
If I'm Coach Matt, a guy that still has not been selected, a guy that I know is probably better than me, to be honest. He's E-Bulldog. That's a guy I'm shocked that's still on the board. Maybe he wasn't around that much for preseason. I don't know what the case. I don't know why he's fallen back so far. I would consider him a first-round talent. So I'm a little shocked he hasn't been taken yet. If I'm Coach Matt, you got to roll the dice. Kind of have to shift your game plan here. That's a guy I go with 100%. Because you know what you're going to get out of him. You know he's going to be fast, and you know he's going to be consistent. As the ticket comes in, we'll see what Coach Matt selects.
All right, absolutely.
All right,
this is going to be interesting to see. The pick is in for Coach Matt. We'll see what direction he decides to take, whether he decides to go with another previous face or whether he decides to take a chance on a new one. Sorry about that. We get to look and see who the pick is going to be here, and Rich perfectly in front of the board as usual.
Returning to Hendrick.
Marcus
Once
Edo
again, we have
that gets taken by Coach
Marcus.
Matt, the last driver out of the Hendrick Cup stable from last season, driving in the number 88, and someone that I noticed who showed a lot of speed in that Week 10 Texas race that seemed to be so infamous, pretty much a turning point in the season. Marcus Edub gets taken in the middle of the third round here by Coach Matt. And are you at all surprised by this pick, or do you think it was still a pretty good pick overall?
I mean, at this point, the guys available you're going to be happy with whoever you get. I think the Ridge Rat's power went out again. He was having trouble earlier. Surprisingly, the stream's still going on, but unless you just turn out the light. But no, I think Marcus is a great selection, and I think he's going to bring a lot to the table for Hendrick. So yeah, as far as Marcus being selected, a great opportunity to return back to Hendrick and continue the dominance that Hendrick possessed last year. See if they continue doing that.
Absolutely. One of the things that I'm a little bit surprised by, there's 2 drivers left who I'm kind of eyeing to be taken in the end of round number 3 here by D-Blood and Grimm. It's the 2 drivers left on the board that we have already mentioned, one of them being the Xfinity Series champion, L77 Caps Don 6 Ingus, the biggest name ever, and the man that has absolutely tormented me by having to say it as he runs up front every single week in the Xfinity Series. But he is still on the board, as well as E-Bulldog 48 in the number 37 machine last year, a man that we mentioned is one of the better tacticians and strategists in the league. It'll be interesting to see whether they get picked with the next 2 or whether they decide to go with someone else.
Absolutely. I mean, only a couple of options really left. I will say this. I think it was confirmed early in the week that L77 Caps opted to stay in Xfinity and fight to repeat his championship. So he will stay in Xfinity, from what I've been told this week. So I don't even believe he's an option for Cup. So he's got to have a lot of time. So we'll see right here what D-Blood selects for his last pick for the Cup Series.
All right, pick is in.
Absolutely. We'll be looking to see D-Blood. Currently, his roster consists of himself, J-Cuz, and Pa Outlaw. And Ridge is in to write down the last pick of the third round for D-Blood. And it's going to be
E-Bulldog.
48, the man who
Grimm, you're on the clock.
A second ago gets taken by D-Blood as the final driver on the Cup Series roster for him to have his roster completely filled out now. What do you think about this pick here, Turtle? Definitely one that we were kind of expecting, but certainly still an interesting one nonetheless.
I personally love the pick. To me, this is the equivalent of, I don't want to go super high, but almost like a Peyton Manning falling to the third round. I mean, he's a guy that's going to get you wins, and he's going to be consistent. I was shocked he fell so far. I mean, that's a testament to the talent of this entire group that's getting selected. So, like I said, I mean, we've been saying his name since the first round, expecting him to go at any time. So, great pickup for D-Blood. His patience paying off. To be quite frank, I'm looking at it right now. D-Blood's got one of the strongest teams I'm seeing just on paper right now. So, obviously, you got to put your actions on the track. So, we'll see how the performances play out starting next Thursday at Daytona. But as of right now, great pickup, E-Bulldog, a great guy to race with, and he's super fast. So, looking forward to see how Joe Gibbs ends up doing this season.
Absolutely. This is going to be probably the most interesting season obviously this was only the second season. I'm sure it'll be the most interesting we've seen so far after season number 1 really laid the foundation for this. But this is going to be one of the more interesting things that we've seen going into Daytona in the Cup Series here. Just how these guys are going to mesh, having
with the last pick
just about a week
of the season 2 White Knuckle Racing Draft.
It's going to be the Daytona 250
Cup Series
we have going on now as Ridge Rat goes down to write down the final pick. Grim Reaper 51. The pick is in, and he decides to take
Something Wong. Congratulations,
Something
man.
Wong.
Congratulations to all our Cup drivers. We'll be starting the Xfinity draft here in about 2 minutes.
Probably Mike G2338's biggest rival in the Xfinity Series last season, driving in the number 20 Ream machine, the one that I loved so much, and Christopher Bell's old Xfinity machine. And I have to say, this was something that I was a little surprised by. I didn't know whether he was going to stay in Xfinity or go into Cup. Obviously, he's able to get over the ledge and make his way into the Cup Series.
Regardless, he is a Cup driver. He's earned that. He performed very consistently last season in the Xfinity Series. As you mentioned, a friendly rival to Mike G. I mean, when I got my lone win at Atlanta, it took those two guys getting black flags as I was laying back, being conservative, my tires. So those guys made a mistake, and that's when I started flooring it to get that win because they had to serve those 15-second pit stops. So those guys are always 1-2, or at least one, in the top three, almost at every single track last year. So great pickup by Grimm. I really like Grimm's team. They got a strong team led by Grim Reaper and, of course, Billy Boy Roy. And they complemented greatly by Desert Commando and some Ting Wong. And I want to say this, James. If you're one of those guys that's on the bubble that did not get selected for the Cup, do not hang your head because, as we saw last year, you can, 1 week you're in Xfinity, you perform really well, you dominate, you get moved up. You the possibility of getting moved up. It's your time to prove it. So don't get discouraged. Just go out, race your race, and dominate, and you'll end up moving up. So don't get sad because you didn't get drafted. A lot of us weren't even in Cup last year, and now the opportunity has presented itself because if you put in the work, you practice a lot. Whatever else cliche from high school football you want to hear, you can work your way up. So I'm excited to see where these Xfinity guys go next. We're going to start here in probably about 30 seconds for the Xfinity draft, but there's a lot of surprises in the later rounds, but ultimately I think every single guy that was selected deserves this opportunity.
Absolutely. And for the guys that are about to be selected into the Xfinity Series draft coming up, I am very, very excited for all of you. Very excited once again for the Cup drivers that just got selected. And as we get ready to set up the Xfinity Series draft now, I want you to take one last look at all of these rosters. Take a picture on your phone if you have to. I need your honest opinion here. Who do you think got the best overall draft of all 5 of these teams?
Taking a look at it, I think my unbiased opinion, I know it's going to sound super biased, but I really, really like how everything kind of fell into place with 2 teams. First of all, RCR, I know how talented D. Miller is. I know how talented M10 Miller is. I think I will add a lot to the table, but adding Mike G, having him fall to round 3, that's a guy that's people sleep on a lot. He doesn't talk that much. He's a kind of a quiet guy, so he doesn't make the most noise literally, but he makes the most noise on the track. So I'm super excited to be teamed up with him and watch RCR compete for a championship this year. And I know we're trying to add another element to an owner's championship, but I really, really love D-Blood's team as well. You get a guy like Jay Cuz, who's, he's going to be clean and consistent, going to get you some wins. Paul Outlaw, and then E Bulldog, who I'm very high on, falling all the way back to round number 3. I mean, there's really not one team that I think is heavier than the others. Coach Matt, obviously having the heavy hitters and young boy Terrell and McLovin, as well as him, who's a super awesome racer himself, and a guy like you bring in Marcus back. So, I mean, you can say something about every single team, whether it's TCW's team or Grim Reaper, Stuart Haas. But those are the 2 teams I think will be competing week in and week out. But, never sleep on the Hendrick boys.
Okay, absolutely, and I liked the idea with him deciding, Coach Matt specifically, deciding to go with drivers that he already had contact with in the previous season, literally bringing back the exact same Cup roster that he had last season, and having some of his Xfinity Series guys end up going to new teams, much like what we've seen in actual NASCAR, seeing guys like John Hunter Nemechek going from GMS and instead of going to a Chevy, going to a place like Front Row Motorsports. We saw Tyler Reddick go from an RCR car to an RCR car in Cup as well. So you also see a little bit of that action going on as well, where you see some guys that were scouted by specific drivers or specific captains as drivers now going up and picking those guys in the first round and really making statements. And I kind of refer a little bit more to guys like P. Cola Gator, who got drafted ahead of Mike G, Marcus Edub, proven veterans like that. Also talking about guys like young boy Terrell, who only came in on a limited schedule last year and gets taken ahead of what you thought were championship caliber drivers in guys like E Bulldog and Marcus Edub. So I'm definitely going to be interested to see how this season turns out. We get ready now for the Xfinity Series draft, and I just have to mention my own favorite team because I know I asked you for your opinion as well on it. Looking at these rosters, I'm probably going to have to say that I would probably say that the strongest team right now looks to be D. Miller's team in the RCR group. M10 Miller, his brother, obviously the dynamic duo themselves. You're obviously in that room, and I know you're a very fast driver. You've been very consistent in the Xfinity Series, and I'm sure you'll bring that same effect. And Mike G, who was my favorite to win the Xfinity Series championship heading into Vegas last year, and was the fastest man in the Xfinity Series all season long. So I seriously think that, D. Miller probably has the best roster.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I could honestly listen to you talk about myself all day. You know, just keep talking about me, how great I am. I'm just kidding, but no, I mean, it's one of those things that it's tough to differentiate who's going to be stronger until we actually race. And even Daytona, it's tough to say because obviously you're using the draft. You'll be using your teammates more than you ever will or have been throughout the rest of the year. So super speedways, we'll see a lot of teamwork there. A lot of guys pitting with each other, seeing how those strategies play off. Do you use 2 tires, 4 tires, and things like that? But I don't want to sound redundant, but you know, being a part of this league now for a few months, I'm just super excited to not just broadcast for Xfinity, but also, you know, be in the driver's seat competing alongside these great guys we've been talking about all night. So I guess that's a testament to the work put in this. All this can't be within comprehension without the hard work of guys who are doing it outside of the PlayStation 4. Like, led by Fred, who's the...
All right, everyone, we're going to start the Xfinity draft here.
And I'll continue my thought.
Hope you all have fun watching the Cup Series, guys. Pretty entertaining. Got a few surprises there.
Absolutely.
Got all the names that we use as captains from the first round. We'll put them back in the hat, and we're going to do a redraw again for the order for the Xfinity draft.
Once again, going to be put in different positions now.
First pick for the Xfinity will be
1, 2, and 3 of the Xfinity Series Allowed Draft. Let's see who goes first overall.
Dale. Get my marker. Forgot.
All right, it looks like D. Miller is the first guy to be taking drivers in the Xfinity Series draft. Got the 2nd overall pick in the Cup draft, so it looks like he might very well be in the best possible drafting position for the Cup and Xfinity Series mix here.
I'm going to shake that is. Got TCW.
A little bit of a flip-flop in the order for the Xfinity as D. Miller was 2nd in the Cup in selection, as TCW was 1st. Now flip-flop 1 and 2.
Next we got
absolutely looking for TCW with that beautiful W that he made there. Looking to try and maybe capitalize on that 1st overall pick success that he had.
And depending on the guys you scouted,
would you look at that?
And we have.
I know me personally, I like in fantasy drafts. I like towards the end so I can get those 2 quick picks. So it's not always a bad thing if you're a 4th or 5th selection.
Absolutely. Coach Matt once again getting the 3rd selection in the 1st round, 2nd, and 3rd round right there in the middle. D-Blood getting the 4th pick as well, so nearly a carbon copy of the draft order in the Cup Series now as we move along.
Good luck to all you captains and drivers.
Reaper 51.
Dale, you're on the clock.
Final pick in the 1st round and the 1st pick in the 2nd round in this snake draft here for White Knuckle Racing.
Yeah, 100% now. I mean, almost a carbon copy of the Cup Series, but now, you know, some of the strategies still going to play out. I mean, we'll probably see some guys that are going to fall back. A guy that I really like, that I've been racing with the last few weeks, Sporty Morty. He wasn't in season 1. I thought he was going to be a truck guy, but he's constantly asking the right questions, how he can get better. And he gets mad at me if I come out ahead of him at the pit road, and I was behind him previously. So he's just always asking the right questions. So. That's a guy I'm looking at in the Cup Series. A guy like Citrus, who honestly will probably make it to Cup before the season's end. Another super fast guy. And the rumor has it, I mean, there could be an expansion team later on for the Cup in season 2 with Team Penske. I believe will be led by Ridge Rat as the season goes on. We don't know how that's going to work out, if or when. But there's a lot to be told. So the 1st round of Xfinity, these are going to be the future of White Knuckle Racing. We'll see how it plays out here, these first few picks. But I wouldn't be shocked at all, especially in round 1. You see a lot of these guys in Cups here in the next month or 2.
Absolutely. So you mentioned Sporty Morty. I was really a fan of him whenever I got to race with him, looking at a couple of other guys that are still on the clock. Nemco Wood 2187, very consistent driver. The self-proclaimed Cup snub of the century. Very, very high praise there, as he was very, 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 very angry, is what I can really say about not being able to make it up to Cup. He's in Xfinity Series. Very, very excited, though, to see him race in the Xfinity Series, a good friend of mine, and definitely someone that I think is a little bit criminally underrated. We're interested to see when he goes in the 1st or 2nd or 3rd round of this draft. And you also talk about L77 Capstan Sixingus, the returning Xfinity Series champion.
With the first pick
back into the series, we'll see where he
White Knuckle Racing Season 2 Xfinity draft.
Pick up his old
the first time we've had an Xfinity draft. We have going first.
We take a look
Sporty
at
Morty.
the order. D.
Congratulations.
RCR first overall, TCW with the second overall pick, Coach Matt with the third overall pick, D. Blood 87, the captain of Joe Gibbs Racing with the fourth pick, and Grim Reaper with the fifth pick. The first pick of the first round in the Xfinity Series draft is in, and with the pick, D. Miller has selected
Sporty Morty.
Sporty Morty gets taken with the first overall pick, and we just talked about it a second ago. Sporty Morty, very much a consistent driver. Originally thought that he would be in trucks, but continued to get better, ask all the right questions, and obviously has a great passion for this league. And I'm very excited to see he got the first overall pick here, with him being taken to D. Miller's team in RCR.
And selfishly, James, I'm super excited to have him be in the RCI organization, a guy that I've ran with the last few weeks, really got to know. He added me on Instagram today, so he's a guy that I enjoy having around. So we thought we might end up on Hendrick with Coach Matt, but the fact we're still teammates going to different organizations.
All right.
Super happy.
With the second pick, the Xfinity draft.
Absolutely.
TCW
So now with the second overall pick,
selects
TCW getting ready with that Front Row Motorsports and Fresh Fenway Racing mix
Jay
group
Harris.
that he's got going on there. Already getting his
Coach Matt
second
is
pick
on the clock.
ready as we continue to give you guys live coverage of the draft here. The Cup Series draft is already over. We'll be back and go through the Cup Series and Xfinity Series rosters before we hop off for tonight. But right now we're looking at TCW getting ready to make his second pick.
And Jay Harris getting selected, that was a guy that I thought had the Cup potential. I raced with him a lot, and it usually comes down to me and him in certain rooms. And he's a guy that pushes me to be better, and we both race each other really hard. Sometimes we get a little aggressive with each other, but he's super fast, and I was shocked he didn't make Cup. But at the end of the day, that he knows he's Xfinity. He came in late into season one in Xfinity. He just needs to prove himself for a few races. I wouldn't be shocked at all if he makes it to Cup here the next couple months. So, good for TCW. Great pickup for Roush Racing for TCW. So, I know we kind of mentioned Cap's the defending champion. It wouldn't shock me if he goes next, but there's so much talent. I was going to bring up Jay Harris, but he just went. But a guy like Citrus is still on the board. So this first round, I'm sure some of these guys get mad at me mentioning names that they might be thinking about selecting. But yeah, you can't be upset by these picks so far. I mean, both super competitive guys who, are good guys, great racers. So looking forward to what Coach Matt selects here.
Yeah, absolutely. Jay Harris deeply impassioned into what he does in the White Knuckle Racing League and made his way up to Xfinity last season. So definitely going to be fun to see Jay Harris there in that Ford-led organization there by TCW. Now we look at and go over to Coach Matt. I would assume that Don is the pick here because he's the reigning champion and last season pick, like I said previously. I don't know. I just don't see anyone else going here.
The pick is in, and Coach Matt has selected Don't Want None over the defending champion. So for a second, I forgot about Don't Want None. I just thought he was saying he doesn't want to draft. I thought Coach Matt was like, I don't want any guys. But no, that's actually a gamer tag. So Don't Want None. I've raced with him a few times. Good dude, very clean driver, doesn't complain about nothing. So that's a guy that's probably was on Coach Matt's radar. So good selection by him.
All right, I'll be interested to see what Don't Want None does. I have yet to race with him personally, and I have yet to talk to him as well and be in a party with him on PlayStation or anything like that. But as you said, a consistent driver and a guy who is always extremely clean with his competitors. I'd imagine he's more of a Harry Gant type of driver, and that makes me very excited because that's a lot of what McLovin Racing was like whenever he came in, and then he started to make a little bit more moves on the racetrack and started to show off a little more of his speed and untapped potential that Coach Matt got out of him. Same deal with young boy Terrell coming in. So definitely almost seeming to fit the mold of a Coach Matt Hendrick Motorsports developmental prospect. And I'll be interested to see whether he makes his way into Cup for this team in season number 3, seeing that Coach Matt is obviously very focused on drafting some of the guys that he's already familiar with.
All right.
The next pick
is in, and Ridge Rat is about to make
Blood
announcement.
There you go. That would be for D Blood, the man who is the head of the
someone we're all familiar with by now.
Driving the number 19 Toyota Camry for the Cup Series group, and now it'll be interesting to see what he decides to do with this pick. Ski Mask Leezy, a man that we mentioned
Graham, you're on the clock
earlier. Mr. Podcast himself is still on the board right now. We're also still taking a look at Don being on the board, the defending champion, 4th overall. Looking at guys like Nemco Wood still on the board as we get ready to see the pick right now.
The Joe Rogan of White Knuckle Racing. Get this man some DMT. This guy's about to explode onto the scene. Excited for him to move up from trucks, get the opportunity at Xfinity, see if he can prove himself to get into Cup. So another guy who wants to contribute outside the league. I know it's going to sound cheesy, whatever, but because of COVID, this has allowed us to have the opportunity to meet people we would, we're all across the country. I'm in Indianapolis. You're all the way in Las Vegas. So, it's cool that a game from a motorsport that we all love can bring us all together. And Ski Mask, doing the podcast, has really elevated this league. And I'm super excited for him to get drafted by D-Blood. That's a great pairing. So, looking forward to see how he performs here for Season 2 in Xfinity.
Absolutely. So Ski Mask Leezy off the board. We mentioned Don still on the board as well. Nemco Wood, another driver that is still sitting there on the board in the Xfinity Series. I still think, again, criminally underrated driver, and a little bit surprised that he hasn't already been taken. Another thing that I want to mention out there is just that a lot of these drivers are showing a little bit more speed than they are consistency in these races, because we haven't necessarily seen them run in extremely long 50% 4 times wear races in the preseason. If anyone was tuning in, they would know that they saw a lot of more 25% with stages. A lot of these guys showing off a little bit more of their short run speed. So these guys are, I'm sure, making a little bit of predictions on their picks with what these guys' long run speed will look like throughout the season, because obviously that's another really important aspect to being able to win races in the White Knuckle Racing League.
100%. So Grim on the clock. A couple guys that I'm kind of surprised that haven't gone. Would be a guy like Citrus. So let's see if Grim will make that selection here.
Absolutely. One driver that I have yet to mention, and it's a little bit interesting because he made his way onto the scene, yesterday, Matt BW83, a man who came in and did the open race last night in the Cup Series on NASCAR Heat 5. Ridge Rat was in there as well. I believe there were a couple of other coaches that were in there, such as Coach Matt himself, and a couple of other
Cats,
guys
congratulations,
drafted in this draft, such as Butters 19.
You're back on the clock,
and others, along with a couple of other new prospects. He came in and showed that he could be very consistent and showed some great speed at Homestead last night.
100%. As we see Grim make the selection, he drafts the defending champion. Coach Matt must be not too happy with how the selection has gone so far. He's losing some of his guys, but he went with Don't Want None. He had the opportunity, but L77 Caps, a guy who loves to work with his teammates. Wednesday nights before the race, he's on 2-3 hours before, getting laps in. We ran together. We ran together a lot the last year in Season 1. I remember Las Vegas, the race that won him the championship. Me and him ran together for about 2 hours, just going over strategies, tire pressures, pit strategy. So he loves to work with teammates. He loves to help people out. He's also really good at short track. So Grim's got a good one in Caps.
Absolutely. The defending champion, and I'm sure could possibly be the favorite, although we have a bunch of new faces going in. And I'll be very interested to see what these guys decide to do with the second round. And another name that we have yet to mention, and someone that I've been racing quite a bit with and have gotten to know personally, has great music taste as well, is King Shadow. And I don't know when he's going to be going in the draft. He showed a lot of speed in the truck series. He's beaten me at every track from 2-milers to 1-milers to short tracks to super speedways and all of the 1.5 that are right in the middle in between. And I think that he's going to be a surprise pick that could go in the third round as someone that almost no one has put their eyes on. He's a great young personality, and I like him quite a bit.
All right. Grim gets back-to-back picks here for the Xfinity.
So we get ready now for Grim to make his next pick. He's already on the clock with the defending champion on the board. Do you think he's got a little bit more of a chance to maybe make a splash pick here, a little bit more of a risky pick, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of fast guys, a couple Cup potential guys who haven't been drafted.
Welcome to White Knuckle Racing, King Shadow. D-Blood?
Indeed. And I'm sure that there's going to be quite a few drivers who go a little bit later in this draft than we expected as analysts, but we will see that as soon as this second round ends. But at the beginning of second round, Grim is made his pick. The pick is in, and Ridge is writing it down on the board now, and he goes with King Shadow, the man who I just mentioned for the first time 2 minutes ago. gets onto the board with Grimm. What a pick. He manages to snag away one of the fastest Xfinity Series potential drivers and makes his way onto the board now with the 6th overall pick in the Xfinity Series draft.
And James, to be perfectly honest, I don't know much about King's Shadow. I'm not sure when he came about in preseason, but I do know Grimm, and I know if he sees a lot of potential in this guy, he's probably fast, and you're talking very highly of him. So, we'll see how he runs, but that's why I'm in the booth. These guys are on the track, although that's a cliche announcer joke. I too race, but like I said, I don't want to like BS because I don't know much about the guy. So we'll see how it turns out there for the Xfinity Series for Stuart Haas.
Yeah, absolutely. So D-Blood now on the clock, the man who put together a very, very solid and consistent Cup Series roster is now trying to look and add on to his already impressive Xfinity Series roster that starts off with Mr. Podcast Ski Mask Leezy. And now we'll see what he can do to give himself another teammate to work with in the Xfinity Series in round number 2 here. We're still looking once again at a couple of those guys that we talked about, such as Nemco. Y'all Ain't Ready Racing is also on the board. The man who finished second in the Truck Series standings last year was the only man who challenged D-Blood at Las Vegas and actually took home the victory over, I believe it was the number 3 of Skew Drop EDRT. So definitely going to be an interesting driver to see. I don't know when he's going to go in the draft. I would project maybe a late 2nd round, early 3rd round pick.
Right.
But who knows? If the chemistry is right and D-Blood likes him a lot, he could go right here.
And it looks like they're making a pick right now for D-Blood's team.
And there we go. Yeah, absolutely. The next
D-Blood
pick is
selects
already getting in for the
Y'all
White
ain't
Knuckle
ready.
Racing League. We look to try and see who's going to make it onto the Gibbs Racing Xfinity Series squad.
And D-Blood goes with Y'all Ain't Ready.
Y'all Ain't Ready Racing, the man who I mentioned just a minute ago. It seems like I'm almost the predictor of picks here before they actually go because I'm not looking at my phone or anything to see where these picks are. I'm taking all these drivers off the top of my head. So it's definitely interesting to see that I'm kind of listing a couple of names that end up going right afterwards. I guess it's just because I've raced with quite a few of these guys before. But Y'all Ain't Ready Racing, a very consistent driver, raced in the number 45 in the Truck Series last season, finished second in the championship standings, as I mentioned, to D-Blood. And I want to get your thought on this pick because although I've raced with him a couple times and I know quite a bit about him, I'm not necessarily sure about the chemistry that he has with D-Blood.
Well, I think D-Blood's perspective, they raced together for a championship in the Truck Series. So a guy he knows that's super competitive. They were both in that final to win the Truck Championship. So I think he's basing it off of who he's comfortable with, who he knows can get the job done when that opportunity presents himself. So I'm not shocked D-Blood's drafted truck guys
Coach Matt
so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely names that we've seen before, but, that's always a good thing whenever you're trying to make sure that you can get consistency out of drivers and not necessarily going with some riskier picks. We saw, obviously, Grimm use
Citrus
that
on
pick
Twitch.
Caps, the defending champion, to take a risk on
TCW
King Shadow,
on the
who's a new
clock.
driver heading into the league. But I like D-Blood's approach as well, taking and making sure that his picks right now are just very simplistic, no-nonsense picks, and that he's getting drivers that he really likes that have been there before.
Yep, and as we see, Coach Matt with his 2nd round selection selects Citrus on Twitch, another guy who's super fast, super aggressive driver he was on that Cup line. I thought he might would sneak in that round 3. He's got to prove it first in Xfinity before he moves up. But great selection there by Coach Matt.
Absolutely, and a great racer in the Truck Series as well, and in Cup whenever I've gotten to run with him in those 2 series. I've yet to race with him in an Xfinity Series car, but I really love the speed that he brings, the consistency that he races with, and the competitiveness that he has. It's almost unrivaled, and he certainly is quite a character off the track as well, someone that I've loved to be talking to continuously, and obviously a great streamer as well. Check him out for Citrus on Twitch, quite literally. Whenever he goes in and plays NASCAR Heat 5 as well as other video games, he's a great personality, and I think he's going to be a good ad for Coach Matt. Again, another guy that kind of fits that Coach Matt Hendrick Motorsports mold for a developmental driver.
Absolutely, and honestly, I'd be super excited to race in Hendrick only because they have the best paint, some of the best paint schemes in Xfinity. So, from the 1 car, the 7 car, 8 and 9, that's a good selection to have. So if you want to switch things up every week.
Absolutely. And yeah, you talk about some of the paint schemes. Those Chevy Camaros have always brought some slick paint schemes. And as we get DLCs into Heat 5, we'll start getting a few more of those great paint schemes that have already made their way onto the track in this season. So it's going to be fun to watch. And absolutely going to be fun to see those schemes out on the racetrack as well. We move now to TCW, who's already on the clock and looks like he has his pick in. Now we're just waiting for Ridge to come up and write it on the board. TCW drafted a very stellar Cup Series roster, and now after drafting Jay Harris, who was in the Xfinity Series for part of last season and showed a good amount of quickness, we'll be looking to see what else he can add to that stable.
Right on, right on. And TCW makes his selection for the second round, and he selects OKC, a Mexican, a new driver for season number 2, making his way in the Xfinity, making his debut next week.
Absolutely. I love to race with OKC Mexican. Got to race with him quite a bit in the truck series with a group of friends of mine before he got into the White Knuckle Racing League while season 1 was happening. I got to meet him and race with him quite a bit. So I'm excited to see him come in to the White Knuckle Racing League. He's a good, solid driver. There's nothing really bad to say about him. He does well with his equipment. He's very consistent, and he understands pit strategy very, very well. So no shock to me that he gets picked in the second round here, although I had yet to mention his name. It's good to see him be able to make his way onto the board here in the late second round. Another good pick by TCW. I think he's been very consistent with his throughout the night.
Yeah, absolutely. Another guy that has shown a lot of speed in this preseason, a very aggressive driver, especially on restarts. So, going along with Jay Harris, will be 2 teammates that I think will work extremely well together, that will perform well. To be honest, there's a lot of competition already in this Xfinity class. Season 1 had some talent, but because a bunch of guys kept moving up or moving back down, we didn't have a lot of consistent Xfinity races. So the fact that, already we're looking at 8 guys that can potentially make it to Cup within the next couple of months. I'm expecting to see a series that you can't predict who's going to win. It's going to come down to almost strategy almost every single race, just because how good some of these guys are.
Yeah, absolutely. I am personally really loving a lot of the selections that have been taken so far. A lot of these guys, not necessarily people that I would have been expected to take either as early or as late as they've gone. Seeing guys like Joe Watman being taken in the first round while Citrus goes in the second. Definitely a little bit different from, I would say, what I guess would be a personal draft board that I have.
All right,
going.
pick
But
is in.
nonetheless, these guys are making some phenomenal picks, and I am definitely interested to see all the parity that goes on as we continue into round number 2 here of the draft.
Absolutely, and D. Miller has back-to-back picks, and his pick is in, and
Yeah, Miller's listen to Nemco.
he's going to select Nemco.
Miller, you have your second pick coming up now.
There you go, Nemco Wood, 2187. Again, a personally good friend of mine. Very, very happy to see him go in the draft here. And like I said before, the self-proclaimed Cup Series snub. I got a chance to race with him with the Raggies group and was a teammate of his for a little while whenever we were racing in the SHR team that was going on there. A little bit earlier on in the year during the whole COVID pandemic. So it's great to see him get picked up here in the Xfinity Series. I'll be interested to see if he can make the waves that he was talking about and make his way into the Cup Series before the season's end.
Yeah, a guy I personally just enjoy racing with, even if it's just for fun. I was kind of shocked he made it to the end of round 2 for D. Miller to make that selection, but that to me is a huge steal. Like you said, Cup potential. Had a chance to get drafted earlier tonight. Glad to see he's within my organization, so I'll be working with him a lot. But great selection. I know I'm sound biased, but I think it was the right call.
Yeah, absolutely. So good to see Nemco go off the board now. We get back into round number 3. D. Miller is going to have the first pick in the third round after getting the first overall pick and then the last pick in the second round. So he has the next pick. Be interested to see who the next driver in the RCR stable is, and that'll give you another guy to work with in the Xfinity Series. Again, I know that you're super excited to be going into their Cup Series program and now getting to see some of your teammates in Xfinity Series go as well.
It's kind of cool to have this perspective as far as I'm broadcasting this, and the excitement I'm having, who is Dale going to select? Who am I going to be working with personally? So, analysis aside, it's just exciting to be in this position to where I can kind of see the future of White Knuckle Racing right before my eyes, and a few of them will be my team. So, I hear the sound for the next pick is in. So, see who Dale Miller picks.
Dale has his next pick in.
All right. Oh, the third round has begun, and with the first pick in the third round, D. Miller for RCR goes in and selects
TCW, you're on the clock.
Looks to me like he is going to select Dallas Stars. 91241. The man who has already made some waves in the Xfinity Series last year was almost able to get the win after great pit strategy at Atlanta, although you were able to outdo him there. And he showed a lot of consistency later on in the Xfinity Series. Gets picked in the early third round here again by D. Miller. And what do you think of this pick?
I like racing with Dallas Stars. I mean, I raced with him a bunch in season 1. He's super clean, and he's a strategist as well. You talk about that race at Atlanta. I mean, we had similar strategies. My strategy, I try to stay out a little longer so I have fresher tires for that last run, and I was able to pass him. And when racing for the lead, I mean, he could have raced me super hard, but I think he knew how much more fresher my tires were, and he raced me super clean. So that's his personality. He's going to be clean, and he's going to race hard at the same time, and trying to outthink people when it comes to winning races. And he's just a decent dude. I mean, that's something that I know Dale's looking for, is just guys he has seen prove that their character matches their performance on the track. So super excited to have Dallas to the team. We were competitors last year, and now we'll be within the same tree of organization. So great selection by Dale there.
Yeah, absolutely. So now TCW, the next man on the board, and a lot of the names that we mentioned that were going to go in the second round did end up going. So now we're looking at a little bit more of an open canvas in terms of drivers that could possibly be taken in the last 2 rounds of the Xfinity Series draft here.
TCW has his pick in.
I'm not really sure whose name to throw out at this point. I talked about Matt just a minute ago, MagGW83, who's still on the board, although he was kind of more of a one-night wonder more than anything. He showed consistency and speed in the couple of races that he was able to get in, and could be a last-minute flyer here in the Xfinity Series possibly.
Coach Matt, you're on the
of
clock.
course, some of the other drivers, look at Frostfang, who's been racing in the Truck Series as well. T-Nasty 205, another driver that was racing in the trucks for a couple of nights here, and we'll be interested to see what these guys are going to be able to do as the next pick is in.
Yep, and the third pick for round number 3 for TCW is going to be Frostfang. So good selection by TCW, a guy that's kind of come on this thing the last few weeks. We'll see how he continues his uprise into White Knuckle Racing with TCW.
Absolutely. Frostfang driving in the number 44 truck, for anyone who's been watching in the preseason. He's been quite fast in that Natalie Decker machine for Niche Motorsports. Now gets the chance in the Xfinity Series to run with TCW in that Front Row Motorsports and Roush Fenway Racing organization. I'll be interested to see how well he does, because he's shown to not be as consistent but show quite a bit of speed whenever he's been near the front of the pack, and has shown to be a good pack driver as well, not getting into contact with people too often. So I'll be very interested to see how he does moving forward here now in the Xfinity Series in that organization.
Right, and I think sometimes it's hard to show consistency in preseason because there's a lot of pressure you're trying to show out, especially if you're new to the league, while also racing with some of these Cup Bubble guys who are obviously have already proven that they can run Cup. Now they're just trying to show out. So there's a lot of competition even in preseason. They're not just going up against a bunch of 9-year-old rookies who want to go backwards all the time. It's a very competitive room, even if it's preseason. So he was able to show out. He obviously caught the attention of a few owners and is able to get selected. So congrats to Frostfang on getting drafted in the third round in the Xfinity Series. Now, a guy that I'm still kind of surprised that's fallen back so far is Muscle Cars 24. So I'm curious. I know he's super fast for
Coach Matt has big
short track. See what Coach Matt selects here.
All right, Coach Matt back on the board, and this time he decides to go with Rich Gang Evo 1000, the man who was in the trucks last year for ThorSport in the number 98 machine, teammates with drivers such as 1420, and he showed a lot of speed in early runs, and sometimes was there around late in races to have the chance at victory at places like Texas and Bristol. I'll be very interested to see how he does in this organization. A little bit of an unexpected pick, but a solid one nonetheless.
Yeah, I'm super happy for him. Takes the next step, to moving up in this league, and a super competitive league. I mean, there's a bunch of leagues out there. But WKR has just within the last month, you know it, I know it, have put themselves on the map as far as the quality of drivers. Now the quantity is getting there, but the quality is what we're looking for, and Rich Gang fits that perfectly. Just clean racer. He's going to race you hard. He's going to compete for wins, week in and week out. So, I'm legitimately pumped because I know I'll be broadcasting Xfinity and just seeing how close this is all going to be. You look at guys like Sporty Morty, who burst onto the scene. OKC Mexican, another fast guy. Citrus, who had that cup potential but fell to the second round. Xfinity, Don't Want None, the defending champion Cap. So many great guys. Nimco, Dallas Stardom. You can name all of them. There's so much talent here. That these guys can compete in Cup and most.
All right, Steve Blood has his pick in.
Money on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we go into the next pick. D Blood in the Gibbs organization is up once again, and with this pick, he decides to go with Mesos, a name that I have yet to mention tonight. Very much a consistent driver once again. He's shown flashes of greatness in some of the chances that I've gotten to race with him. Although I've been able to race pretty much side by side with him, he's pretty much as fast as I've been in the truck series racing with him in the last couple of weeks. Been interesting to kind of develop a friendship with him as much as anything else. Very much a friendly guy and a consistently good racer, a great guy to be around, and I like this pick quite a bit here for D-Blood in the Gibbs organization.
Absolutely. I haven't really gotten to know Mesos that much. I have raced with him a few times in the last couple of weeks. Another guy, even when you're racing hard yourself, because I'm trying to prove myself to get into the Cup at the same time, you're still like hyper aware of some of the other names you see at the front. So Mesos is one of those guys. So great selection by D-Blood. D-Blood kind of went the truck route. Now, a different strategy with Mesos. Excited to see how this will play out here with JGR.
Yeah, absolutely. So Grim Reaper's pick is in. Again, the Stuart Haas Racing group in the Fords gets another shot here with the last pick in the third round, and he decides to go with the man that you talked about just a minute ago, Muscle Cars 24. Now goes off
Muscle Cars.
Great speed in the truck series last
Welcome
year.
to Xfinity.
Number 50.
Grim, you're back on the clock.
And now gets his shot in the Xfinity series here on the SHR tree.
Yeah, and Stuart Haas, led by Grim Reaper, selects Muscle Cars, as you had mentioned, and another guy kind of reminds me of similar to Jay Harris and Citrus. More on the aggressive side of racers, super fast. They're going to be up the front competing for that win. So can't wait to watch Muscle Cars. I think a week and a half ago, me and him kind of rubbed each other the wrong way. I would say our fenders more than anything, but I love race with him. There's some tracks he's a lot faster, man. You can learn from these guys. So just because you're in Xfinity does not mean you don't have the talent to be in Cup. You can always take some notes from drivers who might be better than you at certain tracks. So Muscle Cars, expecting for him to compete heavily. Grim Reaper's done a great job with his class so far.
Absolutely. I like what you're saying there with Muscle Cars. A lot of these guys doing great at specific tracks as well, maybe a little bit better than nearly everyone else on the board at specific places. I know Muscle Cars was very strong at Texas and also did great at places like Bristol and at Homestead. So it'll be very interesting to see what he decides to do as we get a little bit closer into the later rounds here, going into the beginning of round 4. Grim Reaper now on the board once again for his last pick of the day, the beginning of the 4th round here. Who does he decide to take?
James, I'm not quite sure. Like, there's guys who, aren't going to get picked that should be in Xfinity. They have the talent. That's how loaded this whole, group of guys are. Like, so it's hard for me to make a decision. I think all the guys that I thought would get drafted have.
Next pick is in.
But we'll find out here in a sec.
Back-to-back picks here for Grim.
Absolutely. The next pick is in for Grim Reaper. And with this pick, he decides to go with Keith Too Easy. Makes his way onto the board now in the beginning of the 4th round. I've seen him run somewhat consistently at places like Indianapolis and the short tracks, places like New Hampshire and Bristol. In the Cup Series races that we've done in the preseason and also in trucks, makes his way onto the board with the beginning of the 4th round here by Grim.
Yep. I mean, it keeps the guy. He's made a name for himself the last few weeks. Just like a lot of these guys. I mean, you're starting to kind of see that storyline flow together with every single team. Guys that have really shown out in the last couple of weeks. Guys you probably maybe not have heard of NASCAR Heat 4 or even the beginning of Heat 5 that really kind of came out of nowhere. But Keith's shown that consistency, and good for him. He's got a great leader in Grimm to kind of show him the way, and he's got great teammates. He's got a champion in Caps right there, King Shadow, and a strong competitor in Muscle Cars.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure he's got quite a bit to learn from, and I'm sure he will develop and get even faster over time. So great to see Grimm has rounded out his roster for the Cup and Xfinity Series. His draft is done, and maybe just want to take a second here to review. So obviously you're looking at the Xfinity Series roster. He's got Capstan 6, King Shadow, Muscle Cars, and Keith Too Easy. And with his Cup Series selections, he decided to go with a little bit of a different route. Instead of taking more proven talent, he went a little bit more with some guys that were going to be an interesting pick and made their way into the Cup Series in the last few weeks. So Jose Protege, the first pick in the draft, went to TCW, but then you look further down on the board and you see a little bit more of the picks that Glenn made. He went with Billy Boy Roy, who was a little bit less of a proven driver. Desert Commando, who also came into the preseason, and Sultan Wong, who was a great Xfinity Series competitor.
D-Blood selects.
Now the pick is in for D-Blood to make his final selection of the day, and he decides to go with...
We're out of space. K. Schmiller.
C.H. Miller.
Not Kush Miller. K. Schmiller, guys.
The White Knuckle Racing League for the moment gets
Coach
drafted in the second pick in the fourth round by D-Blood, who rounds out his roster in the Xfinity Series. And I remember watching KSH be a consistent Xfinity Series driver last season. A little bit surprised that he lasted this long.
Yeah, another guy raced with a lot last season, kind of similar to Dallas Stars. I remember that Atlanta race. It was those two guys leading the way in that last third of the race, really going back and forth. I mean, Schmiller, he has those speed, especially at the 1.5. See if he can show some consistency at some other tracks. I like this pick for D-Blood. I think he's put together a very positive team in both the Cup and the Xfinity side. So a good conclusion for the JGR squad. K. Schmiller, expect to see him to compete hard as well.
Absolutely. So Ski Mask and Y'all Ain't Ready, very safe picks for D-Blood. He also goes with Mesopes and KSH. A little bit more risky picks, guys who've shown quite a bit of speed. And then in the Cup Series, he went with J-Cuz, Pa Outlaw, and E-Bulldog. So D-Blood has rounded out the JGR stable in Cup and Xfinity, and it'll be interesting to see how his team runs this season with quite a bbit of consistency showing up all over the roster.
And there's a couple of guys that haven't been selected that are on that bubble, or even guys that aren't on the bubble that I'm shocked haven't been selected. Guys, a guy like Skew Drop who's been very fast in this league, and kind of surprised he hasn't been selected yet. So I wonder if he'll fall in these last three picks. But I wanted to bring him up because that was a guy that I saw that hadn't been selected yet that really stands out to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I want to mention real quick, these draft boards have gotten a little bit further and further off compared to what you and I were kind of thinking as the draft went on. Even in the first round, you could tell that these guys had slightly different opinions on these drivers than you and I did. And you and I have respective opinions as well, but they seem to be pretty close. So it's definitely been fun to watch as this draft unfolds to a lot of these drivers that we may have not even thought would have gone or would have gone quite a bit earlier go now.
As the pick comes in for Coach Matt, his last selection.
Goes with the GOAT name in the entire league, Ben Dover 69. The man, the myth, the legend, who took spot in the Truck Series last year, had to unfortunately change his name at one point in the year, but he is back as Ben Dover 69, and definitely going to be an interesting driver to check out as the season goes along. One of the last drivers taken in the Xfinity Series here by Coach Matt, and a little bit of a different pick from the mold that we've kind of seen Coach Matt take. I want to get your take on this one.
For sure. I mean, if you like guys with gamer tags that are middle school jokes, and Ben Dover 69, he's your guy. He's a guy you should become a fan of. But yeah, Coach Matt knows what he's doing. He knows who he likes. And I don't know a ton about him, to be honest. So he's one of those guys that I trust Coach Matt. He's a guy I've raced with Coach Matt for a long time now. So, knowing how his brain kind of operates, I think he's going to be quite happy with his team as he finishes out his last pick here in Xfinity.
Absolutely. So Don't Want None Citrus on Twitch, Rich Gang Evo, and Ben Dover round out the Xfinity Series group for Coach Matt. Then we take a look at his Cup Series rides that he decided to draft with, going with his team from last year. Coach Matt drafts McLovin, Youngboy Terrell, and Marcus Edub, sticking with the same philosophy that gave that Hendrick Motorsports stable a championship last year. Let's see what the pick here is for TCW.
Let me double check.
I'm curious to see if where Racing's going to
Psych.
be selected. He's a guy that was not even on the bubble, who is just as fast as guys like Jay Harris and Citrus. So I'm kind of curious, why he hasn't. Now, this is a league. There's 100 guys, 100 different personalities.
That's
It's not just how fast you are, but if you mesh with these captains. If they like you got to be likable to some extent. That might sound harsh, but that's part of it as well.
Absolutely.
Dylan,
That's
welcome
just
to
the truth.
Xfinity.
You got to be likable.
Congratulations,
that makes
bud.
You much more attractive.
Dale, you're on the
to your
clock.
Team. So Code Dylan YT, one of the men who was in the final 6 in the Truck Series last year before an unfortunate series of events took him out of the final 4 at Vegas. But still a great driver that was in the Truck Series last year in the number 12 Gus Dean Chevy Silverado, and now looks to make his name in the Xfinity Series as the last pick here for TCW.
Yeah, and Code Dillon, a guy we saw last year, another great racer who shows consistent speed in the Truck Series, moving his way on up to Xfinity. So a big jump for him. He showed a lot in the offseason. I know our off seasons aren't like tremendously long compared to like football or basketball, or even real racing. This is only a month gap, but you can really improve in that month if you're playing more and you're racing with guys who are better than you. Because it's all about shortening that gap of talent. So if a guy is a lot better than you, but you race with them and you kind of follow his line, you can maybe ask the right questions. You can really close that gap and your competitive nature. So Code Dillon, he's shown that. He's shown that he can not only compete in the trucks, but he can make a run for an Xfinity championship too. So I know I've said it a few times. I can't believe the talent in Xfinity. It's going to be so freaking awesome to watch these guys progress throughout the year and see who's going to flex the muscles the most and see who has that potential to move up the cup in season 2.
Absolutely. So Jay Harris, OKC Mexican, Frostfang, and Code Dillon in the Xfinity Series stable there for TCW. Also in the Cup Series,
and with
he's
the
going
last
to be working
pick,
along with Jose Protege, the Heredia guy,
draft
and
night
Pete
here,
Gator.
season
Now we
2
get
for
ready
White
for
Knuckle
D-Miller's
Racing.
last pick in the
D.
Xfinity
Miller's gonna
Series
select
draft. And who does he take?
somebody new. Walleye. I want to thank you guys for watching. Hope you all had fun.
To be Wally
And remember,
14.
it's going to be a great season.
A lot of people probably
welcome to
know
White
about.
Knuckle
I've
Racing.
gotten the chance to race with him quite a bit online with that same group as guys like OKC Mexican and Dallas Stars came from, looking to see whether he's going to make a huge impact on D. Miller's team as a possibly very overlooked guy that gets picked here with the last pick in the Xfinity Series draft.
Absolutely. Wally 14, I haven't raced with him a ton, but another bubble guy that, knowing Dale, how he operates, he's looking for guys that race clean and that fit the mold of what he wants to represent. So I 100% trust his selection here. I've raced with him a few times. Very clean driver. He competes well too. So that rounds out the Xfinity draft. But just looking at all these selections, it's going to be a great season of White Knuckle Racing. And this is just Cup and Xfinity. We don't do a truck draft. That was already pre-selected or to be determined. But even top to bottom, there's a lot of fast guys. Even we have a couple of Cup guys last year that are in the trucks due to schedule conflicts. I mean, the talent's all over the place, so we don't even know how it's going to shape out. But James, I can't say enough how exciting it's going to be, the racing, especially when we hit Daytona next week and see how things shape out.
Absolutely. Tim, I got to say, you did phenomenal tonight, and I'm very excited for you to be able to make your way into the Cup Series. I was really anticipating that you would finally be able to make your way up there and prove your worth in the Cup Series, now getting to work with the Miller brothers, and I could not be more excited for you, and I could not be more excited for this league as we get ready for season number 2. Over 50 new members, over 20 new drivers that make their way into the Xfinity and Cup Series that were not there last season. So this is definitely going to be an offseason full of parity that not a lot of people are going to have time to digest before we get straight into Daytona.
Absolutely. You mentioned quite a few things there. I know a lot of it's going to sound redundant, but how everything shook out, that's just the way it's going to be. It's the guys who didn't get drafted tonight. Do not get discouraged, as I mentioned earlier, after all the Cup folks were drafted. This is your opportunity to show out. This is a game we all love. This is a chance, a game that has brought a lot of us together. People you never would expect to meet before, from Fred Serrano, who's the Ridge Rat who lives in Miami, to a guy like me in Indianapolis, to guys who are in Tennessee, all over the place. It's bringing people together, and kind of a borderline horrible year. So 2020's not been the best year, but I'm excited, and and I appreciate the compliment saying I did well, up here in the booth. I'm glad my $50,000 student loan debt has paid off for my major in communication, so I'm glad that get that out of the way. But you've been asking me all the questions. I want to ask you, James. What was the biggest surprise to you in Cup and Xfinity?
The biggest surprise for both. It's really hard for me. I'm going to have to think about it, and I think my biggest surprise probably has to go back to Cup. We look in the first round, and there's quite a few guys that went in the first round that I was okay with. Seeing guys like Jose Protege, M10 Miller, McLovin go off the board, and Billy Boy even I wasn't too surprised with. But seeing Desert Commando and Paw Outlaw get picked 6th and 7th overall by Grimm and D-Blood was definitely a surprise to me. And obviously, nothing against these drivers, but I didn't really see them as Cup talents. I saw them a little bit more on the bubble between Cup and Xfinity. So definitely risks for D-Blood and Grimm, in my opinion. Risks worth taking nonetheless. But these guys, I'm not necessarily sure whether they are going to pay off for how high they were drafted and all the capital that was used on them. So it's going to be interesting to see how those two turn out for Joe Gibbs Racing and Stuart Haas, respectively.
Right, and I was shocked. For me personally, I thought E-Bulldog falling all the way to the last round. I thought he was a first-round talent, maybe early second, but him falling back to third, he ended up getting stolen by D-Blood. So I think it fits perfectly. I think maybe he was a little disappointed where he got drafted, but he's a pretty mellow guy. I don't think he'll be that upset at all. But so excited to get the season. We've been just waiting for the end of July, get through preseason, do the draft, and now we can finally go racing. As the king, well, not the king Richard Petty, but the king of NASCAR broadcasting, Darrell Walsh would say, boogity, boogity, boogie, let's go racing. I'm excited next week, starting Tuesday with the trucks, Wednesday Xfinity, and Thursday with the Cup, all at 9 p.m., streaming in various locations.
Absolutely. So Monday night dirt, Tuesday night trucks, Wednesday Xfinity, and Thursday night Cup Series racing. We will have action for you guys for over 10 weeks straight as we get ready for Season 2 of White Knuckle Racing League. From Tim and myself in the booth, we say good night to you guys, and we can't wait for Season 2. Have a great night, everybody.
Have a great night, and make sure to follow White Knuckle Racing RCN on Instagram and Twitter as well.